Hey everyone, welcome to Weird Sims. Kicking off my Sims architecture series, we're going to look at recreating some Georgian architecture in The Sims 2. For those not so familiar with the Georgian style, it was popular in England during the reigns of the many different King Georges of the 17 and early 1800s, and we're going to be focusing particularly on the American version of the Georgian style. The style is known for symmetry, and ornamentation is usually pretty restrained. In America, you'll see mostly the wood-frame Georgian-style buildings up in the northeast, and more brick with raised foundation variants towards the south. Identifying features of the Georgian style are double-hung windows, which are usually wide and shallow. They have 6, 9, or 12 glass panes per sash. What you see here is actually I have the 9/9 windows. Doors are usually paneled. Main entrances are detailed with decorative entablatures and pilasters, these are fancy architectural terms, as well as cornices with dentils along the roofline. Those are the little pieces that you see up there, and molding as well by the roof. That usually was only for the front facade, and that's a nice little spiffy detail right there. Okay, so let's get down to building. Most Georgian home floor plans are pretty simple. Just a 1 or 2 story building, and usually only 2 rooms deep. Most rooms have a fireplace, obviously, because you're very likely to freeze your butt off at some point or other in the year back then. I personally don't have any interior finishings in my game that are particularly Georgian-esque, but out of the fireplaces I have, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Gentrific Flamorama fireplace. It's a great name. I'm also going to go ahead and work on my roof. Most of the surviving Georgian-style houses in America have a side gable roof, but I'm going to go ahead and do a hipped roof because I feel fancy. Also, that pitch of the roof is way too high. We're going to have to make that a little bit lower pitched because that's a bit intense. Sims 2 loves to make you look like you're living in Hagrid's hut. Okay, that's a lot better. There we go. I'm going to make sure that my roof shingles look good. Alright, the chimneys are nice and symmetrical. Heaven forbid we have lopsided chimneys. The Georgian Sims will be flipping out. Okay. So we have a central hall too. So we're gonna have these 2 fancy parlors in the front. That's where you meet all of your dignitaries and all your fancy people. But that center entryway, we're gonna have a staircase. I don't have any fancy stairs. I'm just gonna go ahead with a simple base game staircase here. And yeah, we're gonna get this kind of center hall looked all pretty nice, and then we'll start working on the door hardware of the parlors. Luckily I do have some Georgian double doors. What a coincidence. And I got them from Mod The Sims and The Sims Resource. I think it was Phoenix Ferry and Honeywell. They both have really good doors and windows and other from the Georgian period, and I strongly recommend that you guys check out both of those sites. They got good stuff there. Also, I know it's kind of ridiculous because I just spent the past few minutes telling you guys how to make a really accurate exterior Georgian property, but I'm going to actually be not so accurate on the interior. You can see my doors aren't symmetrical, but that's because I'm going to try to mess around with the floor plan because there are some modern amenities that I want from my Sims, like a nice modern kitchen, so yeah, it's going to look like that. But hey, at least the doorways are symmetrical, so there's that. And for the front, you can see I have other options too that I could have chosen from. Pedimentary, my dear, is also from Phoenix Ferry. You can find that on Mod The Sims. I went with something a little bit more simple than not with the broken triangle pediment. Thought that was a little too frou-frou, so I went with something a little bit more simple, but I think it looks just fine. And my bespoke colonial windows are also from Honeywell from Mod The Sims. For this I used the 2 tile, so that'll be a little bit more centered. You can see it's nice and symmetrical. The Georgians, if they could come to the modern age, they'd probably be terrified by a lot of things, but I'm sure they'd be very impressed with this and how symmetrical I'm making this house. So for the interior, in this colonial American period, you would have had mostly just plain wooden floors made of pine, things like that. Sometimes they'd be painted, kind of a nice detail. I have a mixture of the plain and parquet, even though parquet isn't something you would have seen back then. I just like how it looks, so I went ahead with that. And for the walls, a really rich person, and for the front main parlors, you would have elaborate paneling, wood paneling from floor to ceiling. Otherwise, you're just going to have a baseboard, crown molding, and maybe a chair rail, which is that middle piece of wood you see right there to protect the wall from chairs. And then wood wainscoting as well is a good option. A lot of walls were plastered too. Some with wallpaper towards the later half of the Georgian style. You would have, floral pattern wallpapers, but I'm just going, I always liked kind of how wood paneling looks, but you can find a lot of this stuff, again, on Mod The Sims and the Sims resource, and I'm sure plenty of other places too, but this is basically the general idea of what you want it to look like to be somewhat of that Georgian time period. And obviously back then they did not have wall-to-wall carpeting like we do nowadays, but they did have painted floor cloth. That was usually a simple diamond pattern. You can see something a little bit more elaborate in the main hall, the dining room, or the parlors. Usually basically anywhere you're trying to show off how rich you were to your friends and family. If you're going to do a cellar in your Sims Georgian home, you should go with either a compact earth or a brick. Brick herringbone pattern would be probably the most common. Didn't really see too many stone floors in the Georgian period. But yeah, so anyway, things are looking good so far in here. I think we're almost complete, honestly. And I probably did take a few too many liberties with the colors of the wall and the floors. Obviously, they're not entirely accurate. It would take forever to make a video where every aspect is discussed, so this is fine. For the cornice, we're going to be using the Second Empire cornice from the Mansion and Garden expansion pack, mainly because that's the only dentiled cornice I have. Stick that on the front, and that should be it. I'm not well versed at all in historic garden and landscaping, so unfortunately I don't have any good tips or tricks for how to do an accurate garden or anything like that. But as far as the building's concerned, I think this is good. I think we did a good job. So as a conclusion, just go ahead and do a virtual tour. We'll do a little walkthrough real quick with my modern kitchen and everything. I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And hope to see you again in the next video, and thanks for watching.